Hi, I'm Sam Hawley, coming to you from Gadigal Land. This is ABC News Daily. This week, Bruce Lehrmann gave his first media interview after the trial over the alleged rape of Brittany Higgins was abandoned last year. In it, Mr Lehrmann, who's never been found guilty of any wrongdoing, maintained his innocence, saying the alleged assault simply didn't happen. It came as an inquiry into the justice system's handling of the case heard its final evidence. Today we speak to ABC court reporter Elizabeth Byrne, who's covered the story from the start. Liz, we're going to unpack what's happening in this story involving Bruce Lehrmann and Brittany Higgins and where this is all up to. But let's look first at this appearance by Bruce Lehrmann on Channel 7's Spotlight this week. What was he saying?
Well, this was the first time probably a lot of people had seen him speak. He has done an interview with a newspaper before this, but this was his opportunity to, appear and tell people his side of the story.
I don't want to be known as the guy who could have, would have allegedly raped Brittany Higgins. And that's a tag that's out there now, and I don't have the court system to remove that tag anymore.
It did give Bruce Lehrmann a bit of an opportunity to put things in his own words because he never gave evidence during the actual trial.
Did you rape Brittany Higgins?
No, I didn't. It simply didn't happen.
Yeah, okay. And he also, in that interview, Liz, he vented his frustrations at the ACT Chief Prosecutor Shane Drumgold.
He took my opportunity for a not guilty verdict away from me. But he then told Australia, I still could have won it.
So I want to talk to you about Shane Drumgold in more detail in a moment. But remind me, how did we get to this point? Because it's a case that's been going on for a very long time. In 2021, News.com and The Project on Channel 10, they published these sort of bombshell allegations of rape.
Tonight, former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins accuses the Prime Minister of victim-blaming rhetoric in the wake of her rape allegations.
I don't think anyone else should go through what I went through.
She did the interviews first and then she did a sit-down formal interview with police after that. This attracted incredible public interest.
An explosive allegation that throws the spotlight once again on the culture inside Parliament House.
And that's because it allegedly happened inside Parliament House, and it coincided with a huge debate about the so-called Canberra bubble and allegations of bad behaviour and inappropriate attitudes towards women in that context.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
And we saw all these rallies outside Parliament House, March for Justice rallies, and Brittany Higgins had spoken at some of those.
That's right.
You're all here today, not because we want to be here, but because we have to be here. The system is broken.
Now, Brittany Higgins had only made an allegation at this point. The Prime Minister later apologised to her.
I said yesterday in the Parliament that we had to listen to Brittany. I have listened to Brittany. Jenny and I spoke last night. Jenny has a way of clarifying things, always has.
So it did become intensely political, and then by about August, Bruce Lehrmann had been summoned to appear in court, and that formally happened, I think, in September, and eventually we got through to a trial being run.
And Liz, the trial, after much evidence, it's declared a mistrial, isn't it?
Yes.
Tonight, the jury in the Bruce Lehrmann rape trial dramatically dismissed after a juror admits to misconduct.
One of the sheriffs were tidying up the jury room and there was a see-through folder, and she could see through the front of it the heading of a paper about some research someone had been doing that wasn't about things that had been included in the trial. The judge had warned the jury at least 17 times, do not do your own research. The next day, a mistrial was declared, and that was the end of the trial.
So then, Liz, late last year, the DPP decides to drop the case altogether over concerns for Brittany Higgins' health.
That's right.
But that wasn't the end of it, was it? Because then there was this inquiry launched after there were concerns raised about the whole judicial process.
That's right. And the inquiry was actually sparked by the DPP, Shane Drumgold.
An inquiry's begun into the prosecution of former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrmann over the alleged rape of Brittany Higgins.
And it came out of a letter that he sent to police before the retrial was abandoned. And in that letter, he raises concerns about police pressuring him not to pursue the charge against Bruce Lehrmann.
I saw all of these things. My state of mind was that I was suspicious that there may be some political interference. This might point to it.
He said that he thought police wanted the prosecution to fail, and he said he'd been pressured over about a year and a half.
Some of the questions in my mind, hypothetically, were, was this at the time a government minister exerting pressure through the Federal Commissioner onto ACT policing to make a matter go away?
The inquiry's been led by Walter Safranov, who is a former judge from Queensland. Initially, the terms of reference would have been, to look at Shane Drumgold's accusations of pressure on him to not pursue the charge. But those terms of reference were expanded somewhat to include a look at Shane Drumgold's own activities and whether he had conducted himself within the confines of his commission, basically, the rules about his job. So that set the tone for a sort of fairly thorough look at how everybody behaved in the lead up to the prosecution and during the trial.
And how did those concerns of Shane Drumgold stack up in this inquiry, during the inquiry?
For the most part, not very well. To start with, the political interference concerns seem to go off in a couple of different directions. He said to the inquiry he was concerned about that, and then sometime later he said to the inquiry he was no longer concerned about that because after reading the police statements he realised there wasn't political interference, that there was rather a skills deficit.
Sitting here now, having had available to you material that you haven't seen before, you would acknowledge that your suspicions about the existence of political interference to prevent the case properly going ahead were mistaken?
I do accept that.
Thank you.
It was the cumulative effect and the unknown behind that. The statements that I've read have given me the known behind that.
But he was deeply concerned that the way that the investigation had unfolded, there was sort of tension between him and the police.
And what did police have to say before this inquiry?
Well, I think this was quite ironic that the police also seemed to be a bit concerned about politics, but it was a different type of politics. They felt there might be some political pressure to charge Bruce Lehrmann coming from, the Me Too movement influences.
It's hard for me to articulate the amount of pressure on us to get this done at that time. It was just a real desire to expedite this process and get Mr. Lehrmann before the court.
All right, and the inquiry findings are meant to be passed to the ACT government by July the 31st, so not too far away. You've covered the proceedings from the start, Liz, including, of course, the rape trial. What do you think we've learnt from this whole saga about the way sexual assault allegations are handled in the courts?
The process is never very satisfactory. I mean, I know that anecdotally from my own coverage of these issues. Brittany Higgins chose not to be anonymous, so this unresolved situation is highly public. Bruce Lehrmann has no findings against him, so he's left in limbo. So it's not been a good experience for anybody. I think Shane Drumgold summed it up best. He said, there are no winners in something like this, there are only losers and losers.
You know, I've got sympathy for everybody involved in this case. Cases like this have no winners and no losers. They only have losers and losers.
Elizabeth Byrne is a reporter based in Canberra. Bruce Lehrmann is suing Network 10 and journalist Lisa Wilkinson for defamation over their initial reporting of the Higgins allegations. He's also suing the ABC for airing a press club address by Brittany Higgins and the former Australian of the Year, Grace Tame. He has settled a defamation case against News Corporation's New Life Media and national political editor Samantha Maiden. This episode was produced by Veronica Aphap, Flint Duxfield and Sam Dunn, who also did the mix. Our supervising producer is Stephen Smiley. I'm Sam Hawley. You can find all our episodes of the podcast on the ABC Listen app. Thanks for listening.